Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Sheepdog Project podcast. This is Doc with you as always. We are back, or should I say, I am back. Tim will be back at some point. It's great to be back in the studio recording again. Unfortunately, Tim has a lot of Army stuff to do, so he cannot be with me. It's going to be me flying solo probably for a bit. I'm going to have some guests either calling in or here with me in the studio to hopefully keep you entertained. Really glad to be back at it. I know the outpouring of support has just been incredible. I hope everybody understands. We just have so much going on. Just couldn't get in here physically to do it, but back now. So really happy to be back. And on that note, we're going to go ahead and kick this off with, we got a lot of questions that you guys have been sending in over time, a lot specifically in the response to the announcement that we were going to be back in the studio this week. So I'm going to be addressing a lot of the questions that you guys sent in. First, let's take care of some housekeeping. I want to talk about some upcoming events that we have. Of course, as all of you know, I'm sure you go to sheepdogresponse.com. That's our website. There's a list there of all of our upcoming events, but I want to go over some of those. Upcoming September 21st and 23rd in Hoffman, North Carolina, we've got the Sheepdog Level 1 and the Occupational Level 1 course. So that's law enforcement particular. When we say Occupational Level 1, there was a point in time when we were calling that the military LEO course. There's a little bit of misunderstanding surrounding that. So basically what we're talking about when we're talking about Occupational Level 1 is people that have had training already and carry a weapon and are in harm's way as a daily part of their occupation. The Sheepdog Level 1 class is open to everyone, and of course that's basically just for anybody that wants to be a sheepdog. Again, coming to Hoffman, North Carolina, September 21st through 23rd. We're going to have a team up in Post Falls, Idaho, August 22nd through 26th. That's also for an Occupational Level 1, a Sheepdog Level 1, and an occupational carbine course. So if you carry a long gun as part of your job, if you are a SWAT officer, whatever it might be, that's an excellent course for you to go and participate in. That's Post Falls, Idaho, August 22nd through 26th. Palm Bay, Florida, we're going to have a big team down there, October 8th through 11th. We're doing an Occupational Level 1 and a SOTEC Level 1. This is not a private course, but it's limited availability. So if you want to get on that, go to the website, sign up online, shoot Jesse an email at info@sheepdogresponse.com. Ask him if you can get into that course. And really excited about this. So right before SHOT Show this year, January 16th through the 20th, we're going to be in Las Vegas, Nevada. We're doing a SOTEC course, a Sheepdog Level 1 course, an Occupational Level 1 course, and an Occupational Carbine Level 1 course. Really happy to be there to get this kicked off right as we go into the week of SHOT Show. Very, very, very excited about that. So check those out on our website. All right, I'm going to get right into some questions here. I'm just going to do these basically till we either run out of questions or run out of time, whichever comes first. Some of these I'll try to go in depth. Some of these might end up being a whole episode in themselves. So got a pen here with me. I'm going to take some notes in the margins. Most of these I haven't even read, so I'm doing these cold. So Kelly Scott asks, talk about IFAC components and training based on real-world experience. Excellent question, Kelly. So the real-world experience that I defer to in this case is over a decade and a half of experience in GWAT, not just myself, but everybody. And the extremely detailed trauma database that we have on casualties. When I point to the standard of care, when it comes to TCCC, when it comes to IFACs, when it comes to anything that has to do with combat medicine, I always refer back to Ranger Regiment. I really do. And little statistic that I think everybody needs to know, over the global war on terror, the Ranger Regiment, we have lost 58 of our brothers in arms. 58 fellow Rangers have fallen during the global war on terror. That's hard news to swallow. Anytime you lose a brother, that's bad. But something that we take away from that as a bit of good news is out of those 58, it was determined by an expert panel of trauma surgeons, of emergency medicine physicians, of physician's assistant, that none of them had survivable wounds that were potentially survivable with different interventions. That means that the Ranger Regiment is doing everything right. That means that the only people they are losing are people that are in what we call the died of wounds category that could not be saved. That means that they're carrying the right materials. They pretty much have set the standard for the individual first aid kit. If you go to the Sheepdog website, if you go to sheepdogresponse.com and click on the tab to go to the Sheepdog store, the IFAKs that we have there, you'll find that what's in them is pretty much the same regardless of the shape. And that's based on the TCCC recommendations. That's the Tactical Combat Casualty Care Committee. And that's based on the information coming out of theaters. So what you're going to see there is basically based on that. So if you're looking for a low visibility civilian version, we sell an IFAK called the IFAK Ocho. I think it's a great product. Also, I just did a video introducing the Sheepdog Response T3 Persis Israeli bandage, which if you're only going to carry one bandage, that's the one you want to carry because it's 2 combat bandages in one for an entrance wound and an exit wound, plus it has packing gauze built right into it. So, and I said this in the video and I'll say it again. If you're carrying a Sheepdog Response T3 bandage and a tourniquet, that's essentially an IFAK in and of itself. And the T3 bandage has the advantage also that in a pinch, you can use it as a non-pneumatic tourniquet. So we'll probably talk about more on that in the future. Best advice I can give to you, Kelly Scott, come to my SOTEC course. Come to the Spectrum of Tactical Emergency Care course, and I go through that in great detail, and I talk about how to use everything that you're going to find in an IFAK. Great question. Reagan or Regan, not sure which, Guti asks, mentality of carrying and responding to a knife. What are pros and cons of fixed versus folders, pros and cons of different fixed options? When are you coming to Atlanta? All right, let's talk about knives. So never bring a knife to a gunfight, first of all. Sometimes you might live somewhere, if I'm talking to some of our listeners in the UK or some of the other countries, I know we have multiple in the Netherlands and in Australia, you might not have an option to carry a gun, so you're going to carry a knife. I carry a Gerber Ghost Strike. Tim does as well. In situations where I can't carry a gun, which sometimes I work at hospitals where I can't go in packing, I do carry a fixed blade knife on me at all times in the form of a Gerber Ghost Strike, either in the small of my back or my ankle. I'll leave you as the bad guy to guess which, so you don't know what I'm going for. You always want a fixed blade, in my opinion, as opposed to a folder. You don't want something to catch as it's opening, and they do. You also don't want it to become, you think it's locked in the open position, and it's not until you go to use it. And now not only have you not harmed the bad guy, but it's folding down on your fingers and harming you. Now you're completely debilitated. For that reason, I would say if you're going to carry a folder, the folder is the backup to the fixed blade knife. I don't specifically train in knife fighting. I know there's people that do. I know how to use one. I know how I'm going to hold it, how I'm going to wield it if I have to. Typically for me, the knife isn't for closing the deal. The knife is for either keeping someone at bay so I can get to other tools, injure them enough that I can take them down and do damage in another way, shape, or form, or just unass the AO and just get out of there. But I really never want to have the knife as my primary. Unfortunately, again, sometimes you're in that situation when I'm traveling the world. Obviously, I can't take a pistol with me everywhere I go. Sometimes I'm in that situation where I'm depending on a fixed blade knife. I don't feel great about it though. I'll be perfectly honest with you. When it comes to fighting against somebody with a knife, that's a whole separate scenario. And I can tell you that 90% of what you're going to see out there, what people are teaching you, is completely wrong. We can do a whole show on that, so I'm not going to belabor that point. When are we coming to Atlanta? You know what? That's up to you guys in Atlanta. Let us know what the need is. Email Jesse at info@sheepdogresponse and tell us what you got. If you've got 10 people, that's a good starting point. We can go from there. Next question is from Alexander James Medina. I'm guessing the reason why you guys have been gone for so long is due to all the training you have been providing around the country. Yep, that's been a big part of it. What is the most common mistakes you see people make, and what are some quick, easy, and cheap ways to step our game up. Common mistakes. Common mistakes, I would say, is people getting a little bit of instruction, whether it's from us or from somebody else, and thinking, I'm good. I'm in the trained category. And that's not the case. A lot of people are very overconfident in what their abilities are. And we had a system that we used in the military forever, and I'm retired now, so I don't even know if they're still using it. But it used to be for every task that you had to accomplish, you would say you were either untrained, trained. It was untrained, trained, and proficient. So you might be completely untrained. You get a block of instruction, you demonstrate it. Now you're trained, but you're not proficient. When we're talking about proficient, we're talking instructor level caliber. So in that light, I would say to everybody out there, do you feel that you could engage with your pistol in a life or death situation? Do you feel that you could engage unarmed in a life or death situation? Okay, now could you instruct that? If I put 10 people in front of you, are you comfortable teaching that? And if the answer is no, if you're not comfortable teaching that, then you're not fully proficient in it. Because once you're proficient at something, that's when you're comfortable teaching it to others. And most people really overestimate how much skill they have, and overconfidence, I'd say, is the biggest mistake that people make. Be physically conditioned, live the life every day. Don't think this is something you can do in a weekend seminar or something you can do off a YouTube video and put P in that category for proficient, because that's not the case. I would say that's the most common mistake. Quick, easy, and cheap ways. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. For everything, Tim and I have talked about this before. We talk about it at great length. We're not saying that everybody should be doing sport jiu-jitsu. We don't want you pulling guard in a street fight. But I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, in my opinion, and in Tim's opinion as well, is the best base to build off of as far as being able to take care of yourself in a situation like that. And these are debates we can have all day long about whether it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, whether it's Krav Maga. I think most people would agree in our industry that it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, though there are some that disagree in that, but I certainly think it is. You spar at full speed, you're more conditioned. Fights are going to end up on the ground, and that way you know what to do on the ground. So go and roll in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That might not necessarily be cheap, but it's what's going to get you there. As far as firearms go, get training rounds, okay? Get dummy rounds, get the tap rack trainer, and be dry firing every night. Dry firing for 10 minutes a night in front of the TV doesn't cost you anything. Every time somebody pops up on the screen, you're engaging them, planning in for practicing what you're going to do for reloads, for malfunctions. That costs you nothing, and it hands down is the one thing you can do every day to improve your performance, is dry fire. Even if it's not the cost of getting to the range, it costs you nothing once you outlay the whatever it is, 57 cents for the tap rack trainer. And then you can do it every night on your own. Costs you nothing but time. Great question, Alexander. Sim Christensen says, I'm with Team Rubicon, and there are several topics: serving something bigger than yourself, safety in chaos, the essential 3 skills when boots hit the ground in chaos, how to realistically stay in shape and serve something bigger than yourself, how to balance multiple alphas to help in a civilian emergency, the Green Notebook. Wow, that's a lot. So that's a lot to digest, Tim. I think I'm going to have to put a question mark next to that we might have to break that down in a future episode at great length. But yeah, there's a lot of detailed stuff there, and so we're going to go into that in detail in a future. But I've marked your question down. Great question. Tim Craver says, about damn time about us being back. LOL, hurry up. A suggested subject discussion to school safety for kids. Back to school safety for kids. Man, I can't emphasize this enough. So you need to talk to your kids. I've talked to my kids specifically about what to do if there is an active shooter situation at their school. And you need to do that. We want to protect our kids, right? We want to protect them from the boogeyman. We don't want them to have to think about things like that. sorry, folks, that playtime's over. It's time to have that discussion with them, and they need to understand that there are threats in the world in which we live, and you need to have a plan for them. Know what their school is like. Know what the windows are like. Go to their school. You're their parent. You have every right to go to their school and assess that. You have every right to ask those school administrators what their security plan is, and know that. And to talk to their teachers and say, hey, what's your plan? What would you do if this situation occurred? Look at the windows in the school. Know if your kid's classroom is on the first floor, the second floor, the third floor, where it's located. Know if their cell phones have to be locked in a locker during class or they have to be off but on their person, because those are things that are all going to play into what your individual plan for your kids is. 911 is probably going to be saturated. So if you have the experience, if you have the knowledge, my kids know that, make sure somebody else is calling 911, but you call me, you give me a real-time assessment of what's going on in the ground and what your plan is. And if I need to give you a little bit of command guidance on how to adjust that plan on the fly, I will. Have a plan. Hunkering down behind the desk and doing nothing but waiting is not necessarily a plan. So have a plan based on what their school is, based on the physical condition of your kids. Are your kids wrestlers? Are your kids martial artists? Are they big and strong? Are they small for their age? Are your kids a little bit timid? Are they more outgoing? Are they natural leaders? You're going to have to tailor this plan to, just like you need to tailor your plan to you, you need to tailor your school safety plan to your individual kids. Great question, Tim. Luis Fonso Medina says, weapons training, different types of firearms training, regular range versus moving targets such as competition shooter practice, which is truly more beneficial. I'll stop there for a second. Crawl, walk, run. Okay? You're not ready to move on to the cool, sexy stuff until you've mastered the basics. Everybody wants to come to our courses and do the cool, sexy stuff and run around cones and go in and out of vehicles. You're not ready for that if you haven't mastered the basics. So master the basics first. That's when it's time to move on. Emergency medicine course, what one should look to gain from it. As a minimum, you should get again, I defer to TCCC. You get the minimum TCCC skills, which my Spectrum of Tactical Emergency Care course provides, plus TCCC on steroids. So I am accredited through TCCC, so I'm able to give everyone full 16-hour credit and a certification in TCCC. But I also go into a lot of my own experience, how to customize a kit for civilians, how to address it from a law enforcement point of view. I go into a lot of stuff that TCCC doesn't go into typically, and I also have a lot more hands-on time worked into the course. So there are other courses like mine out there. If you have any doubts as to whether or not a course is appropriate, is a good one, email me, mike@sheepdogresponse.com, and send me a link to whatever this course is you're thinking about going to, and I'll vet it for you. Where was I on that? Just emergency preparedness, any situation. And I'm going to get back. We're gonna go back to this one in detail. That's another one that I'm circling, but I hope that answered it at least on the surface for you, Luis. Frank Castiglione. Yeah, that's remotely an Italian name. I would like to hear how technically develop similar programs starting from the foundations to put inside. I think what you're asking is, how does one go about, starting up a program on their own to kind of make yourself a sheepdog, kind of patterned after what we do. I think that's what your question is. I would say, again, it all starts with the basics. Basic physical fitness, basic situational awareness on a day-to-day basis, basic unarmed self-defense, going to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I can't emphasize that enough. Basic firearms training. What's the best firearm out there? The one that you carry every day and that you're comfortable using. So basics, basics, basics. Good diet, good hygiene, good physical fitness, basic self-defense, basic firearms, nothing fancy, doing it over and over again, and being situational aware on a day-to-day basis. Good question, Frank. Steve Juarez, more survival mindset and physiology of fear and stimulus, stress inoculation training. We've talked about that quite a bit. That is something we're going to get into with some neurophysiological experts in the future. So that's another one that I'm putting a circle around. Excuse me, got to stay hydrated. It's 103 in Austin today. So yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that more in depth, but stress inoculation is important. You don't want the first time that your heart rate goes out of control and the adrenaline surges to be when it's a life or death situation. Philip Reeves, a law enforcement go bag combined with an IFAC. Those two things would make a good episode. They would make a good episode, so I'm going to circle that. And I'm guessing what you're talking about as a law enforcement go bag. I think of a go bag as something a little bit different. When I'm thinking of a go bag, it has a burner cell phone, $500 of the local currency, whatever country I happen to be in, a prepaid credit card, a rain jacket, some nutrition bars, a bottle of water, possibly a water filter, a change of socks, a map, and some contact info where I need to go from there. When I think of a go bag, that's what I think of. When you're talking about law enforcement go bag, I'm assuming you're talking about a grab out of the vehicle and respond bag. So I think in order to answer that, I'm going to get Travis Joyner or Jeff Romulinix in here, and we'll talk about that. I've got my own ideas on it, but I'm going to defer to their expertise when it comes to that. IFAC, we already talked about it, but I got to circle around your question, Philip, so look at making that into a whole episode at some point. Clyde Messiah, school shooting response for teachers since most of us can't carry in the building. Circling that one. So that one's going to be, we'll do a whole episode on safety proofing a classroom and how to approach that. I'll probably get a law enforcement officer in here with me to help with that. And if at all possible, I think I might recruit an actual school teacher and see what kind of plans people already have. So great idea for an episode. We'll definitely get into that. Travis Wolf asks, how does Doc grow such a powerful beard? Genetics, my friend, genetics. So it's my Welsh, German, Irish ancestry. That's all I can tell you. Great question, Travis. Joey Warden Ward says, practicing and practice to protect your family that are not hundreds of dollars. Situational awareness on a daily basis, getting a Ring camera for your front door, knowing that the locks on your doors and windows actually work, having a shotgun in the home. Okay, a shotgun is inexpensive, and it's something that anybody can pick up right now and use for home defense. You are going to spend probably over $100 for that. I'm sorry, but those are some basic things that you can do, and just having a plan. And getting your family together and saying, hey, if something goes down, this is where we're going. This is everybody's exit. This is everybody's responsibility, and this is where we're meeting up. So that's some basic things. And we have done an episode, Joey, on home security, and I encourage you to go back and listen to it. It is in our archives, so go back and check that out. Another one from Travis Wolf. Where does Tim find jeans that he can still be nimble enough to try to dodge bulls? So if you look at that episode, he's actually wearing sweatpants in a lot of it. I actually called him out on this. He rode a bull wearing sweatpants. So I got a -5 for style points on that one. Sorry, Tim. And I'll accept the punishment for that next time we roll, but -5 for style points. And then when he was actually at the rodeo, I believe he was wearing shorts, if memory serves. Tim does not wear skinny jeans, by the way. Tim wears regular jeans. They just look like skinny jeans when Tim wears them. Brandon Kinslow says, advice for contracting. What companies are worth working for overseas? Tough question, Brandon. So let's talk a little bit about the evolution of contractors. So contrary to popular belief, everybody thinks of contractors as being a George W. Bush thing. Contractors are actually a Bill Clinton thing, and that was the boom in contracting companies was actually during the Clinton administration, because U.S. foreign policy shift was such at that time that contractors could go places and do things, and if they got rolled up, we didn't have to rescue them because they weren't U.S. personnel. So when they didn't want, if you think about the early days of the Clinton presidency, what happened? Mogadishu happened, right? So what were the news images that we all saw in our living rooms in Mogadishu? The unfortunate images of the CAG operators and the pilots from Task Force 160 being dragged through the streets. And everybody's saying, what's the U.S. military doing over there? What were we doing? I thought we were just handing out food. What's going on? We've got to do something. Well, a little bit of State Department deniability for that is if there are private U.S. citizens places doing things, there are private U.S. citizens places doing things, and you don't necessarily have to go help them out, and that doesn't necessarily make the news when it happens because it's not the same footprint. So under the Clinton administration, there was an explosion in these contracting companies. Now, to answer your question, Brandon, it's ebbed and flowed over the last 15 years. And there was a big boom in the middle there. Think of it like a snake, kind of skinny at the front, big and bloated in the middle, and then skinny kind of where we are now. Thankfully, the big bloated era was not when you wanted to go to work for a contractor because they did dramatically lower their standards. And some of them are listening right now and gnashing their teeth and denying it. But I know for a fact they lowered their standards. I know for a fact at one point, one company was actually so hard up that they were running their own ground branch training for people with zero military experience. They were doing like a 3-week course. So there's something a little bit wrong when a guy signs up with one of these contract companies initially as a firefighter paramedic to go over do one of these firefighting paramedic contracts, gets to know his chain of command really well, says, hey, I want to come back and do what you guys are doing and wear body armor. Oh, okay, we're going to put you through a 3-week course. And this is a guy, again, with no military experience. And yes, I'm 100% sure that did happen. That's a problem. So I would say, long and short, and I'm not gonna go through all of the companies right now because honestly, they change so much, and I don't want to specifically endorse one. I don't want to specifically bag on one either. When you go to interview, if you don't feel like the standards are very high, then you need to turn around. If they want you more than you want them, you might want to turn around and walk out. The person talking to you and interviewing you should be asking you very specific things like what your level of training is and asking you for definitive proof of that. If it's military experience, that should be a DD-214. If that's law enforcement experience, that should be all your certificates and all your proof that you did this training, whatever it might be. They should also be giving you some type of assessment test, both physical and technical, to show that you can do your job. That means shooting, that means moving, that means doing physical stuff, driving, whatever it might be. If the person interviewing you isn't a former Special Forces Master Sergeant, a former Navy SEAL Senior Chief, or a former MARSOC Gunny or above, I would not have a warm and fuzzy about that company, to tell you the truth, because they don't all strictly hire former SOF, but the leadership and those doing the vetting, the subject matter experts should be. And yes, I'm very SOF-centric in my opinions, but that's my opinion, and I think that's what you asked for, so that's what I'm providing. Hopefully that answered your question, Brandon. If you are thinking about doing something contracting, just be wary, my friend, and be careful. Keep your head on a swivel. We don't use... I'm not saying that contractors are mercenaries, but we don't use the word mercenary anymore, right? We use the word contractor now. And you really are going to be on your own when the chips are down. So that is something to think about. Taylor Parrish asks about prepping for extreme weather. All right, I'm going to have to put a circle on that because I'm not going to be able to knock that out in a short period of time. Paul Kessler asked beard or no beard and why. If Tim were here, we could both debate that. I have a beard. I like having a beard. I was only allowed to have one on deployments when I was active duty, so as soon as I retired, I grew it back. I like it. It does, in this day and age, tend to label you. You're either going to look like the hipster or you're going to look like the 3%er, and you don't want to be looking like you're trying to mull on all the labe, right? So I like having a beard. I don't care whether it's in style or not, I'm probably going to continue to have one, and that's my opinion. I can tell you something, in extremes of weather, I like it. It's a sunblock, and it also wicks moisture away. I have been in the mountains of Afghanistan with little icicles on my beard from wicking the sweat away and the moisture condensing. So I like it, and I think it's highly functional. Chris Young asks, good gear and how to pick. Yeah, that's a spectrum, man. So I would have to know specifically what you're talking about. I would say, we always say if your life's worth $10, buy a $10 holster, right? So expect to spend some money, look at reviews. What I do is I look at reviews, and then I look, if it's on some type of website where people have reviewed other things, I look to see what other things those people reviewed and how they reviewed those other things. And then I ask around. So if you have a question about something specific, I can tell you anything you buy from us, we don't sell crap. Anything else, I would say, if you have a specific question, email us about a specific piece of gear. Jory Warden Ward said, basically similar question, proper gear that isn't hundreds of dollars. You get what you paid for, man. If you buy bargain basement stuff, you're going to get a lot of times, unfortunately, bargain basement results. That's not always true, but to some extent it is true. Thomas Harris says, been missing this, talking about the podcast. Glad to be back, Tom. John McMaster's overcoming anxiety. I'm going to put a circle on that one, because when we talk about stress inoculation in the future, that's a big, big part of it. Just all around, get plenty of sleep, get plenty of water, eat right, caffeine, yes, but in moderation. Stay away from refined sugar. And every time you feel anxious, do 10 burpees. That'll cure it real quick. Because a lot of times what that is you're like a racehorse. You're getting ready to get out of the gate. But I've talked about some mindset stuff in the past, especially back when I was doing the Mind of the Warrior podcast. Those are archived as well. If you look back when episodes when I talk to sports psychologists, I talk about understimulation versus overstimulation. So that's something that you can look at. David Baque says, Tomahawk weapon usage, I'm liking those more and more. Okay, all right. So, yeah, a Tomahawk is valid. So is a bow staff. But realistically, what are we talking about here? Are you carrying this under your T-shirt as everyday carry, or are you talking about something that you're having on a backpack, on a go bag, or a get home bag? What are you talking about it for? Man, if you want to wield a Tomahawk, more power to you. Don't bringing a Tomahawk to a fist fight is fine. Bringing a Tomahawk to a gunfight, not a real good idea. So, zombie apocalypse, I'm not so sure. I'm not a Tomahawk expert. I'll talk to Jason Fryer, man. I know he knows some stuff about Tomahawks, and I'll get back to you on that one. Melissa Lynn David, school safety, talked about that a little bit. We'll go into it in depth in the future. Rick William, fuck yes, Doc, about time. Thank you very much, Rick. Stefan D. Leonardis says, talk about everything. Hey, it's all coming, man. Johnny Hennessy says, how to know you are being followed. We'll do, if you do our situational awareness episode and you look at our vehicle episode, we talk about that. But the short answer is, if you suspect you're being followed, know enough about the route that you're on to do a little bit of surveillance detection. Make some turns, make some unexpected turns, go into some parking lots, go all the way around the parking lot like you're looking for a parking space, and then come back out that parking lot again and see if that person is still behind you. And just be situational aware. Recognize the cars that are around you. Recognize if you start seeing patterns. Depending on where you are and how you're approaching this can be a little bit different. And I talked on a previous episode when we talked about traveling abroad. When I was in Morocco, there was a threat there. And what I would do is every morning I would go out in front of the hotel and I would simulate talking on my cell phone while looking around and kind of checking out who was in the area, cab drivers and everything else. And then another thing I like to do is take selfies of myself where I'm not actually trying to get a picture of myself. I'm getting pictures of license plates of cars that are around me, specifically taxi cabs. And then if that license plate starts to come up again and again and again throughout the day or throughout the week at other locations, I know that something is afoot, and I need to be on edge because of that. But we'll talk about that more in depth in the future, and we have talked about it in past episodes, so check those out. And on that subject, if you guys haven't downloaded every single episode, download every single episode. Whatever you're using, whether you're using the iTunes app or whatever it might be, a different podcast app, download all of our episodes. And I want you to pause this episode right now and click download all, okay? And I want you to do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, I want you to have that library for when you do not have cell signal, okay? I want you to have all these to refer back to. And number two, the more downloads we get, the more visibility that gives us on all these platforms, because they rate us and rank us by overall downloads. And if we can bump those numbers up, then more people see it. If more people see it, then we're getting the word out to more people. We're being more of a force multiplication platform. And guys, if more people see it and this starts to get more and more and more popular, maybe we'll up this from 1 day a week to 2 days a week. I can't make any promises, but hey, I would love to do that. Marcy Franchina and Brian Franchina, co-account, says yay with 4 exclamation points. So they're glad we're back. We're glad to be back. And Kyle Rose says, how about Alex Jones being banned off social media and YouTube for, quote, hate speech, end quote. Yeah, man. So here's the deal. This isn't about Alex Jones. This is about anybody. So here's the deal, folks. Everybody has a First Amendment right. I've got the right to get on this podcast and say whatever I want. The government can't stop me from doing that as long as I'm not inciting violence. YouTube and Facebook and all these other social media outlets, those are private companies. They can ban gingers if they want. You know, they can decide tomorrow that for whatever reason they don't want to. People forget there used to be signs in restaurants that say we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone for any reason, and they could tell you to get up and leave. You don't see that anymore. Anyone running a private business has the right to kick me off of YouTube, to kick me off of Facebook, whatever it might be, because they're not the government. The government can't come. You have a right to speak. You don't have a right to be heard. Okay? Do I think certain social media platforms are being a little bit one-sided in who they might censor and who they might not censor? Absolutely, I do. And do I think that's messed up? Absolutely, I do. But they're private companies. So as unpopular as it's going to be for me to say this, that's their right as a private company. If they don't want to take his money, it's so think about this for a second, because I know a lot of the people that are in the camp of they don't have a right to deny Alex Jones. Think about the baker who wouldn't make the cake, right? Whose side were you on in that? He had a right to refuse to make the cake, right? If he had that right, then Facebook has a right to refuse Alex Jones. They're not going to make Alex Jones's cake. You can't have this cake and eat it too. You can't have it both ways. So you got to decide, either a proprietor of a business has a right to refuse service, or they don't have a right to refuse service. Okay? This is not somebody putting a gag on Alex Jones on a street corner. This is not somebody putting Alex Jones in jail for speaking his mind. This is a private company saying, we don't want you on our platform. Sorry, guys. This is America, and I'm not as libertarian as Tim, but I'm pretty libertarian. I don't know what he thinks on this issue. We haven't talked about it. But honestly, I think that's their right if they want to say somebody can't be on their platform. Wow, didn't expect to really get into political stuff, but I guess we did. Looks like we're at the last question here. And this is from Brian Yates. He says, let's see here. So this was actually in a direct message. This was not posted. I don't post publicly much, so I'm sending this in a response to your question about topics for the podcast. Quote, what do we do it for? End quote. We work to become harder to kill. We train to defend others. To what end? In combat, there's an objective. We are defending real estate. We are trying to take it. So what are sheepdogs working and training for? I have my own answer, but I think it's a question for all sheepdogs. It is, Brian, and that's an excellent question. And that's a question that each and every one of you needs to ask yourself. What are you doing it for? Are you doing this because you want to post cool Instagram pictures of yourself at the range, yourself at the gym, and get accolades from people? Are you doing it for attention? And there's people that do, and we've had people in our courses that they're doing it for the image bolster. They're not necessarily doing it to live the life. I'll tell you why I do it. I do it because I'm a realist, and I know we live in a world with threats, and I want to be able to address those threats. I'm 52 years old. I plan to live to 104 years old. I want to meet my grandchildren someday. I want to see my sons grow up in a healthy and rewarding environment for them. I want my wife to be safe. I want my family members to be safe, my loved ones to be safe. I worked very hard for the things that I have, and I don't want anyone to try and take them from me. That's why I do it. I do it for the safety of myself and more than anything for the safety of my family, the safety of those that I care about, because I would lay down my life for any one of them. And that's why I do it. And I know that this is the only way to do it. And I know that this is a pathway, in my opinion, to a life grounded in reality that is healthy and happy. Because I'm not paranoid. I'm not sandbagging the door. I'm not digging a bunker under my home and putting my tinfoil hat on because I think the aliens are coming, or because I think I'm going to get rounded up and put into a FEMA camp. I think there are haves and have-nots in this world, and I've worked pretty hard to be a little bit in that have category, and I don't want people to try and take that from me. I want to project in such a way that confrontation never happens. But if that confrontation does happen, I want to be prepared for it, because I don't ever want to be sitting in a hospital waiting room with my head in my hands when one of my family members is a patient there because I wasn't ready. Because I know what that's like. Because I've seen that firsthand, and I don't want to see that in myself. I don't want to look in the mirror and see that regret, because when the time came and I was called to action, I wasn't ready. I couldn't keep up. I didn't have the skill. So I'm getting a little bit better all the time. And I just, at breakfast this morning, my wife and I got up bright and early this morning, fed the dogs, packed them up, took them to doggy daycare because we got a lot going on today. And we went to the gym. She did her workout. I did my workout, which my Friday, Dave Schwanke, my coach, gives me this absolute hell workout as my last workout of the week. And it starts off slow with some resistance band stuff with the shoulders and some Romanian deadlifts on an incline. Then it goes to a back yoke carry combined with some piston press, and then that gets you nice and worn out for rounds for time of a weighted sled push and Turkish get-ups. And this workout kills me. And he called for more weight this week. He called for more reps this week. And I was really proud of the fact that I answered the call for more weight, and not only did I do more reps, but I did more reps in less time when it came to rounds for time. So having breakfast, having a nice healthy breakfast with my wife afterwards, and I said, I'm a little bit better this Friday than I was last Friday. And that's the most that anybody can hope for, is to be a little bit better every time. When I get in my car after Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and I'm sitting there sweaty and I crank up my Jeep, I reflect on the fact, am I a little bit better this class than I was last class? Not, am I a little bit better than any of the people that I train with? Am I a little bit better than yesterday's version of myself? And that's what I have to reflect on. Great questions, everybody. We got some great ideas that I've circled to go back and touch on again as complete episodes in their own right. We'll definitely look forward to doing that. Getting ready to close here pretty quick. We're right on time. I want to go through these dates again, man. Go to sheepdogresponse.com. And remember, we're going to be in Hoffman, North Carolina for September 21st through 23rd. Post Falls, Idaho, August 22nd through 26th. Palm Bay, Florida, October 8th through 11th. And Las Vegas, Nevada, right before SHOT Show. And we're doing everything. It's going to be the full meal deal in Las Vegas. We had great training when we were there before. We did this. We did it the same way. We did a SOTEC course, an occupational level 1 course, and a sheepdog level 1 course, all rolled in. We're adding the occupational carbine course as part of this. Great training. If you're going to SHOT Show anyway, hey, show up a week early, participate in all of our training. You get to hang out with all of us for a week and then roll right into SHOT Show, which, Murica. That's all I can say about SHOT Show. That pretty much covers everything, guys. Thanks so much for being fans of the podcast. Thanks for the outpouring of support, constantly being on top of Tim and I. Hey, when's it coming back? When's it coming back? So glad to be back. It's only going to get better from here. Hope that I can make a solid commitment to it and not let you guys down again. And I am putting it on my schedule to try to be a lot better about it. So very glad to be back. Looking forward to what the future holds. That's all I got for today, so I'm going to go ahead and close, as I always do, this time with a quote from the philosopher Lao Tzu, who said, "He who controls others may be powerful, but he who has mastered himself is mightier still." Remember that, live by that, and until next time, be a sheepdog.
You have been listening to the Sheepdog Project. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Sheepdog Response. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the individual and do not represent any larger entity, public or private.